that I learned from working at Disney and from Disney storytelling that I bring into how I present out data, how I create a narrative around data, both as a marketer for consumers, as a marketer to try to get support within a boardroom, how I teach my students in the classroom, and then what I teach them so they can bring this practice into their own presentations that they are doing. I named this particular presentation The Art Behind the Data. And as I was listening today and I was nodding, Dr. Allison saying stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. It's really more, and as we kind of talk through it, it's the art that shapes the data. And I'm going to shockingly say that it doesn't end with data. We've become so focused on data and the data that we have and how we can utilize this data to connect and personalize and customize, that we've almost become a little too data focused. And we kind of are at a point where we need to take a little bit of a step back and start thinking about the narrative and the why behind some of this data that we have. So I thought we would begin our story today with the history of digital transformation, right? And it's amazing to me, this is the last 20 years or so. I tell my students, I graduated from college without the internet. I graduated without use of an internet. I was high tech. I had a Hewlett-Packard. It was a word processor. Had a screen about that big. You saw about 3 sentences as you typed. I was one of the cool ones in school. But you think about it, the 1980s, and I probably could have started this in the 50s, but I'm going to start my storyline here in the 80s, right? We have the internet and the World Wide Web. Computers are now connecting. We're able to facilitate this exchange of information all around the world. E-commerce and online in the 1990s. And who can tell me what happened in the 90s that really drove our online retail? Yes. AOL, but who launched in the 90s? Amazon. 1995, Amazon launched. First thing they sold, of course, a book. eBay also in the 90s, 1995, I think, as well, maybe just a little bit later that year. And then we had the mobile revolution, and that brings us the iPhone in 2007, right? And so the iPhone completely changes, especially as a marketer, how we're speaking to our consumers. We have smartphones, and they're more affordable. They're more available. We have mobile apps. Oh my gosh, there's a whole nother way we can talk to people. It gives me a whole new outlet of messaging that I can send. And then, of course, 2010, what do we do with all this data? How do we start utilizing it? How do we start making smart, strategic decisions with all the data that we have? So cloud computing and big data, and he was saying buzzwords, and I thought, I think I've got 10 of them in my first 2 slides. But data storage and processing, accessibility, and all these advanced analytics so we can now start to use this data in a functional way. And then, of course, 2010 to present, AI, artificial intelligence, it has been around for a while, automation. We're personalizing everything in real time. You go to a website, you look at this, you've got a paid search ad, you've got a paid Facebook social media post that immediately says, so you looking at this? No, you like it. So we do not lack data anymore, right? Digital transformation is going to continue to evolve. It's very important, and I'm not downplaying the importance of data. It's very important for strategic decision making. It's very important. It makes significant impact on how we do business on a daily basis. And data-driven insights are constantly driving our strategy. But again, the vocal is we do not lack data. This is just some of the metrics of data. 328.77 million terabytes are created every day. 120 zettabytes of data generated this year alone. They're forecasting for 2025, 181. Videos, is everyone, I'm a huge video person. I love utilizing video. Over half the internet data and traffic is video now, of course, with YouTube. 2,700 data centers. We do not lack data anymore. I mean, if you think about it, if I go back here, I'll age myself. I started marketing probably just a little bit before iPhone. And back then, we'd send out campaigns, and we'd do emails, and we'd do, large TV ads. We'd start hey, we saw sales go up a little bit this week. I think it's that TV ad that we put out there. Now everything's trackable. I send you an email. I know when you got it. I know when you opened it. I know how far you scrolled down in that email. I know what you looked at. I know what you clicked on. I know what was interesting to you. I know how many times you went back to that. A video, I know how much you watched the video. I know what areas maybe you looked at more than once. Everything's trackable now. I have data on everything. So we do not lack data. So then we start presentations like this, right? I create presentations, and this is every data metric that I know. I've got charts, I've got things, and I'm giving you everything. 281 people opened it. There was 84% click-through rate. I'm literally giving you everything. I know so much. But it's understanding what is meaningful data and then how we utilize this to drive action, to get support, right? We became really good at visualizing our data. Line graphs are great for showing trends. Bar graphs, we can compare all of our categories, right? We've got pie charts that show proportion. We got really good at context, and we got really good at visualization. So I'm giving a presentation similar to this, and I'm standing up there, and I think it's fantastic. I've got charts, I've got graphs, they're colored correctly, everything's going great, and I'm getting crickets in the room. And I know for our guests and what we're trying to do and what we're pushing for this campaign, I know where they've stayed, I know the food that they've eaten. I know what they've ridden, how many people they travel with, how many times they've stayed with us, how often they were going into parks. Except all of that is the what. None of it explains the why they did any of these things. So it brought me to Simon Sinek. Has anyone seen his TED Talk? I absolutely love his TED Talks and would recommend it. And so Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. It's the same thing when you're presenting out. People aren't going to buy the what. The guest doesn't care that I know all these details about them. So what? I'm talking to myself. They're reading the email, and they're not really getting that this is personalized to them in any way. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The audience isn't buying the what. They need to understand the why. A couple weeks later, so after my presentation, I'm thinking it fell flat. I got the funding, we were trying to do a new campaign, but it really fell flat. And a couple weeks later, I'm watching Cars. Cars is my absolute favorite Pixar movie. Has everyone seen Cars? Okay, if you haven't, spoiler alert, block your ears, but it was 2006, so by now I hope you've all seen it. So in the movie, right, we're at what? Los Angeles Speedway. Piston Cup is on the line. Oh, I'm gonna have a potato moment. Chick Hicks, right? Our villain in this movie. So Lightning McQueen is flying around the track. He's in the lead. Chick Hicks intentionally bangs into Strip the King Weathers, right? The legend. Crashes him into a wall. He's unable to finish the race. Lightning McQueen comes flying down to the finish line, screeches to a halt. He turns around, and he goes back, and he pushes the king over the line. So this legend can finish his career on a high note. They raced 520 laps. They was 2.3 seconds ahead. He had 6 different fuel ups. He changed his tires twice. That's the data. That's the what. Who cares? The why. It's about friendship, right? It's about humility. It's about the journey. It's not the what. The what kind of explains how we get to the why, but the why is what engrosses us in it. That's what engrosses us. It's not defined by achievements or possessions, but rather connections we make, our experiences, and the journey. This is the moral of Cars, not about the Piston Cup. Of course, my favorite line from the Cars movie, I will digress for a moment, when Mater says to him, "They did what in your cup?" When he describes that he's going to do the Piston Cup. So how do I start now to bring this data and storytelling together? How do we start thinking about taking these techniques that we've perfect it in our parks, we perfect it in our movies, in our rides, in our entertainment with our characters, and bring it into data so it starts to work synergistically together. So I'm able to give out presentations, I'm able to present data in a way that really engages and motivates people. How can I start taking these narrative strategies? So digging into Disney storytelling strategies, and these are utilized across by any of the great writers in entertainment. But you have your hero journey, right? Your hero is out there. You have your conflict and your resolution. You have characters and archetypes. You have your visual, which is huge with Disney. Visual, your humor, your music, break into song. Emotional as well, right? The highs, the lows, the vibes, as well as, I did arrows, but it's your morals. What's your right? What's your wrong? What are we taking from any of this? So digging into them, when you think about the hero's journey, right? It's the protagonist's transformative journey. There's a narrative arc that occurs in any storytelling. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. There's a call to adventure, there's a facing of challenges, and then this ultimate resolution, right, of achieving something. So incorporating that into creating a captive arc with your presentations and your storytelling. Conflict and resolution, right? There's tension. It drives the plot forward. You're looking at satisfying this resolution. It gives the audience the opportunity to connect with these characters. And then characters and archetypes, well-developed, right? You have to have this well-developed so people understand the hero, the mentor, the villain, the sidekick. Who else? My favorite character in almost every Disney movie is the villain's sidekick. I love the villain's sidekick, and they do so much to drive. And the next time you watch how often they're driving that plot and that storyline. But everything serves a purpose, right? There's not 18 other characters. There's not 20 other than there. Every character serves a purpose to advance the story, and they engage you emotionally. And then, of course, visual storytelling, humor, music. I very rarely break out in song in my presentations, which is to everyone's benefit, because I do think I am sign deaf, but humor, visual storytelling, and adding all of this in. And then, of course, emotion, establishing that emotional connection, making people feel the characters and their journey, creating a lasting impact on the audience. And your morals, right? These are your themes that add that depth to what you are doing. This provides those takeaways, so when people are walking out of the room after you presented, they understand what it is you want them to do. They understand what it is and the value of the presentation that you've given, of the data, and what the data really is showing us. So how do you start leveraging this, right? So I do all this deep digging, I look at Disney storytelling, I realize I want to try to bring this into my presentations, I want to bring this to get it to resonate more with my audience. So how do you start leveraging it? So the first things I did as I'm looking through all 6 of these, and some of them you can and some of them you can't, right, is this idea of captivating that narrative arc. Making sure I have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it sounds so simplistic, but I give you the background, I give you the growth, and then I end it and make sure that you are understanding the value of what they're presenting. Making connections with characters, understanding the struggles and triumphs. Either me, as the marketer standing before you, or our target audience. What is it? Where are they in their journey? What are they trying to overcome? What conflict do they have? And how do we as marketers address that? Everything serves a purpose. You don't need every single iota of data that you have. Pull out those metrics that make the most sense. Pull out the metrics that drive your story. Of course, emotion. Emotion is just going to create a lasting impact on everyone, and those valuable takeaways for your audience as well. So I wanted to give a couple examples, and this one here I just threw together, and then we can kind of chat through. We can do a Disney example as well. But this here, StuCat and ProfCon, and some of maybe the data that they'll be collecting over the next couple of days, right? So they'll be looking at email open rates and click-through rates and what we engaged with. They'll be looking at social media impressions and who posted and tagged them. They'll be looking at likes and shares. They'll be looking at how many of us registered to come. They'll be looking at these sessions and seeing how many people attended each session, right? How many tacos did we eat, right? We take metrics on everything. But when you look at all of these different metrics, you want to start understanding the why. So really from this list, if I was to pull out, I would say attendance by presentation, right? Kind of explains you. Now you're getting into a little more of why are we all here today, right? So this enhanced teaching materials. You know, we want to help our students build stronger industry skills. We want to research new opportunities for ourselves and our research that we might be doing. Maybe it's industry insights, networking, professional development. I know for me, a big one was just moral support. What is happening in my classroom does actually happen everywhere else too. So a big moral support as well for me. But you start thinking and you're taking all of these metrics and you start putting a why behind it. Email open rates and click-through rates, they're telling us engagement, but they're not telling us why we are here today. So now you start looking at some of these that you can build on and create a narrative for why we all are here. Example with Disney. Think about, you know, I had a colleague who used to always say that we specialized in heads in beds, right? Our job was to get people's heads and all of the beds on Walt Disney World property. And it's so much more than that, though. So we have a hotel, and my analytics crew, my analytics at Disney, humongous, and they say to me, that hotel really gets a lot of young families that like to stay there. A lot of them are from the Northeast. A lot of them like to come during April. So I create an email, and you know, maybe I put the hotel image on the top of it. I show them dining options they have. I put an offer in there to come and visit. You're my target audience. You're a young family, you're from the Northeast, you like to come in April. And I send out the email. It does pretty good. But then you start looking at some more of the data, and you're like, why? Start questioning it. Why do young families want to stay here? Why would this be important for young families? And that's where you start to build your narrative. So then you look at different data. How often do they visit the theme parks when they're here? Is it because they like the pool and they just stay at the pool all day? And then you notice a trend of, gosh, they go in and out of our theme parks probably more than other people do. So why? This particular hotel is really close to a theme park. This particular hotel allows you to leave the theme park, go bring your kids back for a nap, and then go right back into the theme park for the rest of the day. So now I create an email, and it says, traveling with young kids can be rough. Let's make sure they still get their naps. This hotel's right next to X theme park. You can go back for nap time, get right back to those parks for those fireworks at night. Which one is more compelling, right? It's the same data. I'm using the same data. I'm just creating a narrative around it. Now, I'm not going to say it's perfect. It's just like any data we have, constant A/B testing to see what is resonating with the audience, and you'll know when you hit it. So go beyond adding context to data. Go beyond and explain why you're even telling the story to begin with, right? Create that emotional connection with your audience. Solve conflicts. We always talk about, especially from a marketing standpoint, our customer's journey and where they are in this journey. They have a conflict at each one of these stages. Solve those conflicts. Drive passion for doing better. Drive passion for doing better. So here, you know, with my students, I would really nail them if they gave me a slide that looked like this with this much text on it. But for this here, you know, we're going to let it slide. But I really wanted to stress, too, the difference, because I keep saying you go beyond just context of the data, right? So what am I really? Context gives additional background. It explains. It gives background details to help you understand the data better. When I'm putting a narrative and telling a story, I'm engaging you. I'm captivating you. Context, presenting data with a broader framework, right? Here's an industry average. Here's what we are seeing. Here's our historical trends. Here's how this compares to X that we did last week, last month. Here's why that completely tanked in 2020. COVID, right? Everything's got a COVID label on it. And it really allows the audience to interpret the data accurately. So what you are showing, making sure they understand it accurately. Storytelling, it follows that narrative arc. You're building in elements. You have that beginning, the middle, and end. You're identifying a problem and presenting the data as evidence to help people draw conclusions. You're making recommendations based on the data beyond more than just the what. It's really looking at the why. Engage people emotionally. Make it more relatable. Make it more actionable. And make it memorable as they leave. So some of the assignments that I do with my classes in the classroom to kind of drive this home, because it's a learning, right? It's a learning curve. And it's not something that just naturally comes natural for some people. But one of the things that we do is we run an activity called Know Your Audience. And usually I'll create a pretty elaborate just dashboard in Tableau with fake data on a particular audience or whatever. And what I have the students do is they analyze that data to understand their target audience, and then they create personas around that, create a narrative. What narrative would resonate with this particular audience, depending on what you're trying to do? I'll give them 20, 25 different data metrics. Pick out one. I want you to pick out one data metric or two data metrics. Tell me why you selected those in compiling your narrative around this particular data. And then I push them to tell me, what message would you send? What platform would you send it on? When would you send it? Someone talked about right message, right time to the right consumer. Right message, right time, right consumer. And I encourage them to do that as well. Another one is crafting a compelling narrative. This here you can utilize any case study. I try to look at case studies that kind of have a little bit of a narrative going on. It's just not very clear. I also try to pull case studies that have a lot of data in them. There's a great one that we utilize from Harvard Business Publishing, and it talks about paid versus organic media, and it's fantastic. It is just paragraph after paragraph of data, tons of it. So I encourage them to take that case study and create a narrative around it. Give me a beginning, a middle, and an end. Break that down into a story, utilizing 2, 3 really important data points in that. And then emphasize the role of conflict and resolution that they see. But this here you can do based off of interest in the room that you might have and interest in your class. We do a lot of what I call data visualization, putting context around data. I introduce them to Tableau. We take a lot of Tableau learning modules within my class. If you haven't worked with Tableau, they are owned by Salesforce. We utilize Salesforce a lot in my classroom as well. But they are fantastic, and they have a lot of great student resources as well to tap into. But we'll use, data sets from DataGov or Kaggle, or Tableau gives you great data sets as well that they can start playing around with. And this is where we do talk about the importance of visual elements: color, size, layout. There's a great resource, the book Storytelling with Data. I don't know if anyone's read that, but Cole Nussbaum or Knaflic wrote that book. I love it. Hers is a little bit more of context and visualization of data, which I'm drawing a really, really thin line between that and storytelling. But that's a great resource as well. It's a great read if you have students that are really interested in learning data visualization. And then storytelling techniques to engage and inspire. So with all of their presentations, so my digital marketing, we do large, very digital marketing plans. Most of them select pretty big companies, and what they do is they decide on a brand new product that company might try to sell. So their final digital marketing plan, they'll give me the full plan, but then I encourage them as far as their presentation to make sure they're utilizing these storytelling techniques. The idea is they want their classmates to want to buy this sort of fictional product that they may come out with. And we test the success of data stories, right? Does it inspire action? Did you all want this product? And we have a lot of fun with that as well. So just to kind of sum it up, set your stage, which I love this. I don't know who from Stukin created this, but I love it. It's innovative. I love the ProfCon sign. Know your audience. Simplify complex data. And we have enough of it now. You don't have to showcase everything that you know. visualize it to enhance comprehension. And I kind of put this in that sort of adding context bucket of data. Take it further, take it further. Craft a compelling narrative that sits around that. Include only your characters and your elements that are going to drive your story. And use those storytelling techniques. Engage, inspire your audience. Data without a story is like a plot without a twist. And thank you. We all lived happily ever after.